You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Whether you're joining us from the radio, the TV side of things, the internet streaming platforms, the podcast, we're thrilled that you are here, unless you are tuning into our show via Iran, which is very unlikely. Right now, we have additional footage that shows the at least claims from the Iranian regime that they are seizing what appear to be Starlink or satellite internet devices. They are also operating heavy jamming from at least the sound profile appears to be Russian jamming devices. You say you can tell the difference between Russian and Chinese jamming devices? Oh, absolutely. You absolutely can. And right now that appears to be everything that the regime of the mullahs in Tehran is able to do. Now, there is another alert that has come out from the United States government, another security alert. U.S. citizens should leave Iran now, any means necessary, depart by land, to if by sea, get out of there. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. And not just because the country is in upheaval. According to several sources, including according to a public statement from the Kurds, those who are considered part of the Kurdistani militias between Iraq and Iran, have announced that they have taken 2 cities in Western Iran. I repeat, 2 cities. According to the Kurdistan National Army, this is a pseudo press release this morning, says, quote, although the occupying enemy has deployed tens of thousands of Iranian armed forces and thousands of Hashid al-Shabi fighters to silence voices, suppress the uprising of our nation, and crush the heroic resistance of the Kurdistan National Army units, our steadfast nation's voice remains loud and its steps remain firm. They report that they have captured a headquarters of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that would be the IRGC, in the northwestern Iranian city of Kermanshah. So if the Iranian regime has to divide the suppressive forces in order to fight what is essentially an invasion from the Kurds on its western edge, the regime doesn't have much time left. They really don't. Now, they are getting into the swing of massacring anywhere at this point between 1,900 and 20,000. We have no idea. And when I say we have no idea, I mean one of the reasons the President of the United States has announced he's returning to the White House this evening is to ascertain how many individuals, how many civilians have been killed in protest by the mullah's regime, by al-Khamenei's goons, to decide what it is the United States is going to do.
Going back to the White House now, we're going to look at the whole situation that's going on in Iran. It's really bad stuff. Minnesota is going to have to take care of itself for a little while. We have tremendous theft and fraud going on in that state because you have an incompetent governor, grossly incompetent governor, and a corrupt governor. But we'll straighten that out. But Iran is on my mind when I see the kind of death that is happening over there, we think. So we're going to get some accurate numbers. I'll have it in about 20 minutes. We'll get some accurate numbers as to what's happening with regard to the killing. The killing looks like it's significant, but we don't know yet for certain. I'll know within 20 minutes. So,
So with the Iranian regime currently in a serious kind of upheaval, there was a plan, at least it appeared, that Vice President J.D. Vance, who is more isolationist, his staff is certainly more isolationist, we're going to talk diplomatic means and possibly delay another couple of days. It looks like Donald Trump may be intervening and moving now. We don't know. And the answer is, to be completely honest, we're not going to know until you see an after-action report from the initial media outlets that are reached out to post-operation. By the way, that is a very good thing. The age of leaks, in which everything is out in front of the public 72 hours in advance, appears to be over, or at least the current sources appear to be stopped up. Now, moving forward, the President of the United States also posted on Truth Social, quote, Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions, save the names of the killers and abusers, they will pay a big price. I've canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. MIGA, make Iran great again. President Donald J. Trump. Now, there are a few out there who said, well, actually, MIGA means make Israel great again. I'm happy to inform you that both Israel and Iran begin with the letter I, as do Indonesia. There's amazing that there are other countries out there that have names with beginning with the letter I. That's just little fun foreign policy analysis for you. But the president reiterated this again today while he was in Michigan, touring Ford assembly facilities and talking to the Detroit Economic Club. Here was the president today.
And by the way, to all Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible, and save the name of the killers and the abusers that are abusing you. You're being very badly abused. If the numbers are right now, I hear 5 different sets of numbers. I hear numbers. Look, 1 death is too much.
This is a problem because Iran has shut down the landlines into the country. They've shut down the internet for over 120 hours at this point. That is a very long time. Some of our imaging services that allow us to kind of take a look at what's going on the ground in the Middle East have experienced some communication difficulties, mainly because, again, Iran is employing every last jamming device that they have. Pretty sure at this point they have just a guy screaming nonsensically on top of a factory warehouse, giving Soviet shortwave vibes. But it is an issue because if you don't actually know what the regime is doing, if they do like they did during Obama's day, where Obama sat cucked as the Iranians slaughtered their civilians again and simply sat there and looked stupid, well, that's a serious problem for the foreign policy of the United States.
But I hear much lower numbers and then I hear much higher numbers. But I say save their names because they'll pay a very big price. And I've canceled all meetings with the Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. And all I say to them is help is on its way. You saw that I put tariffs on anybody doing business with Iran.
Secondary tariffs, a means of the president of the United States. He was asked to follow up on what this meant exactly later, because it does, because there are those who have the Iraq syndrome, who suggest that any kind of action in the Middle East means another Iraq or Afghanistan style war. The president is clarifying what it is that he means by help is on the way by saying we're pre-operation.
Truck business went through the roof.
You said to Iran this morning that help is on the way for protesters. What did you mean by that? What kind of help?
You're going to have to figure that one out. I'm sorry.
How many people?
I like that. I do. Sorry. No, I'm not going to reveal everything that we're planning to do right now. That doesn't make any sense at all. Biden did that. We're going to strike the Yemens, incoherently. And then 72 hours later, when the strike came in, everyone was gone. Turns out not effective. Not effective whatsoever. Trump comes and goes, I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do. Could be a lot, could be a little, could be over to the east or the west, could be the west for all I know. And then the media goes away aggravated because, they don't have their clip ready to go. Now, on the matter of retaliation, because this is what people are, saying, oh, Iran is going to suddenly, even though they've been ineffective all the way up until now, all of a sudden they're going to wipe out all U.S. bases in the Middle East or something. They've promised retaliation. And if the mullah says it, it must be true. So this was Trump's response to the retaliation claims.
Iran says that it will retaliate in the instance of U.S. strikes against U.S. assets in the Middle East. What do you say to U.S. service members about why it is worth the risk to intervene in Iran?
Yeah, Iran said that the last time I blew them up with the nuclear capability, which they don't have any longer. So Iran said that the last time. They better behave.
Agree. Not bad. We'll hear more this evening, I am sure. Again, the president back in the White House, the situation developing. The Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, the guy who is the heir to the Shah's throne, released a video a couple of minutes before we actually hopped on the air. This is translated from Persia. It's not a direct translation, so bear with me. Says, my compatriots, as I told you in my previous message, the world not only saw and heard your courage and voice, but is taking action. He says, by now, you've probably heard the message from the President of the United States. Help is on the way. He's speaking with members of the White House. Nothing is set in stone at this point, but as things develop, we will keep you abreast of it. That brings us over to the situation regarding the domestic front, the sanctuary cities and states, the President of the United States announcing also while in Detroit today, all of these localities, all of these jurisdictions that have made not enforcing federal law the standard are going to get a rather interesting wake-up call. So the President of the United States announced while in Michigan today for places like Minneapolis, like Boston, like Los Angeles, New York City, who have operated as havens for those who are violating federal law, no more federal money of any kind. Here was the president.
We're giving 90-day notices to places like California, Scott. Right away, we're going to send out that notice. Who would bill the federal government as people poured into the state to send those people back because no country can afford to do it? No country can afford to take in millions of people, pay for their education, their health care, their hospitals. You just can't do it. And we all have a heart. You can't do it. But many of those people are murderers. They're people released from jails, prisons, mental institutions.
This is true. This is 100% accurate. J.B. Pritzker was caught, his government's administration in Illinois, releasing thousands of illegal immigrants back into the communities. Not even with ankle monitors, just release them out of prisons who had been convicted or charged with violent and or sexual offenses, not to mention the white-collar crime. In Minnesota, we've seen the exact same thing. In Oregon, we've seen the exact same thing. Washington State, the exact same thing. California, in Massachusetts, in New York. And the idea the American taxpayer should have to foot this from the federal tax perspective is ludicrous.
Insane asylums. They're people that are drug dealers. They're addicts. Additionally, starting February 1st, we're not making any payments to sanctuary cities or states having sanctuary cities because they do everything possible to protect criminals at the expense of American citizens, and it breeds fraud and crime and all of the other problems that come. So we're not making any payment to anybody that supports sanctuary cities.
Now, already we have hit, I wouldn't say a snag, a very interesting legal maneuver by a judge. The media ran out and said, aha, there's a judge. He's ruled that Trump can't freeze federal funding to Minnesota and other states. And the Associated Press had to walk this back pretty clearly. So the Associated Press headline originally was, Trump administration can't block child care money for 5 Democrat-led states. It has been updated to, for now, judge says. So a federal judge, particularly Judge Arun Subramanian, nominated to the bench by President Joe Biden, he ruled on Friday that President Trump's administration has to wait 14 days. They have to wait 14 days while legal arguments are made by California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York in order to discern whether or not the funds should be frozen to those states. So they get funding for 14 more days. So even the media who's tried to rush out and say, aha, there's judge, he's got him this time. No. Even federal judges appointed by the Biden administration have made it rather clear that there's really not a lot they can do if the government finds fraud in federal funding. There is no mechanism of the United States Constitution that says that once Congress passes a law, if that money is then stolen, the money keeps flowing to the stolen place. There's nothing that says so. And there have been at least 12 instances over the last 100 years in which federal money that was allotted to a program was halted and frozen, from the local level to NGO and private grant projects, military contracting projects, all the way to entire states, wings of funding through federal grants. Completely frozen, shut down, stopped, even though the money was already allotted by Congress because fraud was discovered, whether it be embezzlement or foreign transfer or the many different varieties and shapes that fraud can take when one is absconding with federal dollars. So this brings us over to the situation regarding immigration, customs, and enforcement, because the only lawsuit that is on the books that is receiving media attention now, as of today, Tuesday, January 13th, is the lawsuit from Minnesota and the lawsuit from Illinois, suggesting that the President of the United States has no authority whatsoever to send an invasion of federal law enforcement into Minnesota and Illinois. Well, I hate to break it to you, but it's not just, folks like us over here suggesting that lawsuit is completely meaningless because, the feds get to decide where federal law enforcement goes to uphold federal law. Even CNN, their senior legal analyst, made that case today.
I've read both the Minnesota and Illinois lawsuits. They're really political diatribes masquerading as lawsuits. If you look at what both states are asking the courts to do, it's to kick ICE out of those states and cities and to bar ICE from carrying on federal law enforcement in Illinois and Minnesota. That's the top thing both states asked to do, and they cite zero precedent for that.
As I said yesterday, again, you guys know how much I truly despise, being right 2 days in a row.
Answer there, the Daily Double.
But in this case, I'll risk it. There is no law that suggests that federal law enforcement cannot uphold federal law. Number two, there's also no precedent, meaning there's no judge that ruled in a case here, there, anywhere that federal law enforcement have to sit on their thumbs because some Democrat politician from Who Caresville says they really don't like how big, mean, and stinky the ICE agents are. If the ICE agents are breaking the law, that's one thing, but you don't see any argument that feds are breaking the law in these cases. These cases are quite literally junior high students whining the teacher gave them homework. That's it.
Is zero precedent for that. There is no way a judge can say, you federal law enforcement agency, you are not allowed to execute federal law in a certain state or.
That would be the Constitution, separation of powers. Guys, I hate to break it to you. The executive branch of government is governed by, you guessed it, the executive branch of government. I know, really cool stuff.
City. I think the most that the states could get out of this, if they get sympathetic judges, is a judge who's going to ask questions of ICE, who's going to hold hearings, who's going to demand questions about how they're training, how they're carrying out their policy. You also could have judges that issue sort of symbolic orders along the lines of, ICE, you are not to violate the law. But
symbolic orders. Oh. And by the way, he's 100% correct here. A bizarre time and place when it is in fact CNN that is providing even better coverage on these particular things than CBS, for instance, with its new leadership with Barry Weiss. I'm shocked to admit that right now, probably some of the best network discernment on particular issues and matters like this have come from some of the analysts over at CNN. I know, I'm shocked too. But the facts are in fact the facts in this case. Yeah, you can have some judge get up and say, well, ICE is bad, but that's not illegal. Not a federal judge's job to do. But I guess symbolic orders are that kind of excitement for the day. We're getting all kinds of symbolic excitement. The purple-haired Rosa DeLauro, the representative most likely to be confused with the Wicked Witch of the West, has also come out and suggested that she's ready to do some symbolic posturing about ICE, but she's going to frame it like she's laying down the law. So you enjoy.
There has been some bad faith reporting on Twitter, and I'm going to set the record straight. I do not support an increase in ICE funding. Can I repeat that? I do not support increasing funding for ICE.
So what does that have to do with the narrative on social media? Don't get me wrong. I love a weirdo who gets out there and gets a lapel mic and holds it up like a regular, condenser microphone or dynamic microphone as much as the next guy. Sure, great. Yeah, you're a hip kid on the subway of New York City. Yep, neato. But what does that have to do with anything? All right, I'm going to set the record straight. I don't like ICE. I mean, yeah, you're Rosa DeLauro. You're one of the Democrat Congresswoman influencers who probably was an extra in Disney Pixar's Up as the stand-in old geezer. I mean, you've never supported ICE or any kind of law enforcement of any kind whatsoever.
I am looking for policy writers in the Homeland Security bill to be able to rein in ICE.
I'm looking for policy writers to rein in ICE. Did this woman just watch Seabiscuit? She's getting out the horsing metaphors. Like, I need someone to build a stable for Chuckles, my prize-winning steed. It's exciting.
President Trump provided $75 billion for ICE in the One Big Beautiful bill.
Wrong. He did not provide $75 billion in the big, beautiful bill. You did. You are a member of what is called Congress, this really cool third of government that decides what money is going to be spent on. The president then takes that bill, once it is passed by the House of Representatives and then by the Senate, and he scribbles this name on it, his name, unless you're dead and, lying on Rehoboth Beach, and then that becomes the law. See, Congress holds this thing called the purse, which, usually is where the money comes from. Just, in case you're a Somali migrant who doesn't understand where money comes from, just cool tips there.
I voted against this bill. ICE is terrorizing our communities. And I've called on masked, armed ICE agents to leave our towns. Go away. Make no mistake, I'm fighting for you. And I am opposed to the actions of this continuous, lawless Trump administration.
Okay, cool tip from a guy who does a lot of media every darn day. When you get in front of the camera and you say, all right, guys, I'm going to set the record straight. What you do is you then say, here's the record, and now I will straighten it. Here is what people are saying. ICE is doing this, ICE is doing this, ICE is doing this. But when you look at the actual videos and the policy and the precedent and the bills, it actually says this. Getting out and saying, there's a lot of people on social media talking. Someone said, I don't give Facebook my permission to sell my photos. Well, I'm here to set the record straight. I don't like ICE. Yes, thank you, Rosa DeLauro. The Democrats are in great hands in 2026. The messaging is strong. Wonderful. Now, there are some narratives that are desperately being peddled that are quite frankly going to get people killed. So Adam Kinzinger, he's gotten out to suggest, quote, I think it's important to point out ICE does not have the same authority as a police officer. They do not have the power to enforce laws, only to engage in their specific tasks. I.e., they don't do traffic, etc. Impeding traffic is not a penalty ICE can enforce against. Okay, that statement is what we call retarded. It is also malicious, and here's why. Number one, the specific tasks that ICE is carrying out is federal law enforcement. Just right off the top of the bat, where does it say that? Ben Shapiro says, in the name Boy Scouts. Where does it say that ICE can enforce law? In the name Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Amazing. I know, truly shocking stuff, but it gets better. According to Section 1357 and the powers of immigration officers and employees in federal law, all the way down to subsection A, powers that they can execute without warrant, down to section 5 of that section A, to make arrests for any offense against the United States if the offense is committed in the ICE officer or employee's presence, or for any felony cognizable under the laws of the United States if the officer or employee has reasonable grounds to believe that the person to be arrested has committed or is committing such a felony. Yeah, that includes ICE officers. If you obstruct traffic, like more people are doing, thinking that, I'm just turning my car, perpendicular in the road. I'm just blocking traffic. That can't be illegal. I don't know what moron told you this. Guess what? That's illegal. You can't block police like more are doing today. Here's Minneapolis. Now, again, like with Renee Good, pay attention to the angle her car is in. Now, I know that a lot of people in the United States have commercials driver's licenses that shouldn't and do drive rather strangely on the interstate because they don't know how to read English. This is not one of those instances. At least I sure hope to God it's not. This person is driving the wrong way on a street, and I don't mean driving down the wrong lane. They are trying to drive east on a north and southbound road. Or they're blocking traffic because ICE is in an operation there, and these are how groups like ICE Watch encourage menopausal, angry, liberal women to go spend their time. And then when officers say, hey, guess what, you're violating the law, they then try to drive off and, commit vehicular manslaughter. In this lady's case, they just pull her out of the car. Minneapolis in January. What a wonderful place. What a wonderful time. Now, many of us out there have covered the growing riots in Minneapolis, but Ilhan Omar, never fear, dear citizen, Ilhan Omar has come out to set the record straight. See, she has announced there are no violent riots in Minneapolis like you wanted. She's quote tweeting the Department of Homeland Security, who said, hey, don't bring your baby to a violent riot. Again, very basic common sense. Didn't think we'd have to argue that one. But Ilhan Omar, she gets out the dunk and says, there are no violent riots in Minneapolis like you wanted. The only violence we have seen is from your agents terrorizing people. Our neighbors are showing up with love and protection for one another. Love and protection. That's real sweet. Love and compassion has always been our North Star. North Star. I'm going to take a wild guess that the culture recognizing the North Star, probably not Somali, based on one of the most hilarious naval stories, is a Somali pirate ship getting completely lost and stranded out in the middle of the Indian Ocean because they had no idea what the North Star was with which to navigate. So cool cell phone there. But no, there's a bigger one. Love and protection. There's no riots in Minneapolis, guys. There's no war in Bossing, say. Your eyes are lying to you. There's no, riots or anything like that. Oh my gosh, it appears to be riots. I love that. You get Larry the Cucumber out there with the tuba there to issue a very obese charge. Exciting. And again, even CNN has to point out, we're here on the ground. It's not mostly peaceful this time. They dispatched that guy to the East Coast. They got a different reporter who says, things are a little bit rioty this time of year.
I want to bring in CNN senior national correspondent Ryan Young, who has been on the ground there in Minneapolis. Ryan, as you're walking there, I'm wondering how officials are responding to this inflammatory rhetoric coming from the president.
I love the way the anchor sets that up. Hey, I just want to know, how are people responding to how evil and bad Trump is? How are people responding to Hitler? How are they doing, Ryan?
I can tell you they have been really strong in this fact that they're saying they're going to follow through this lawsuit. And the reason why we're walking back this direction is this is just where ICE and a lot of the Border Patrol officials were just here. All these neighbors that you see here were using their whistles and they were blowing and they were trying to stop an arrest. While we were here, we actually saw people running through the alleys to try to escape being captured. And this was a chaotic scene. It lasted for over 20 minutes. There were flashbangs used. There were pepper balls sprayed into the crowd. There were tear gas agents deployed. And we saw people physically trying to get in the way of some of these arrests that were being made.
Hang on. Did you just say people trying to physically get in the way of these arrests that are being made? Wait, that would be obstruction. That's a felony. Amazing stuff. And even the outlets you would least expect would admit that, when law-breaking activity is going on, like how at first, they're out here chanting, we're going to follow through with the lawsuit. No, they're not, you absolute honk clown. Get out of here. They're doing what they have been told and encouraged to do. Riot. That's the language of the unheard, don't you know? Incredible stuff. Absolute. Just protect and love for our neighbors. The first thing we do whenever a neighbor moves in on our street, we bring them a crock pot of Mississippi pot roast, a delicious eclair cake, and we, beat the living crap out of them as they're trying to get into their vehicles. Just a good time. And then the police show up, and then, we try to assault police officers too, because, that's just what you do in the United States. All right. Enough of that for just a second. There is some bigger stuff going on. Yeah, I know. I too am shocked. There is bigger stuff going on. A representative named Robin Kelly, who you've never heard about, but she looks like, you'd expect, has gotten to the floor of the House to announce she is impeaching Kristi Noem single-handedly. She has no idea how impeachment works. She's going to do it all on her own. Very exciting stuff. Check it out.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to announce I will be impeaching Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
All on her own. You know, the part of the Constitution. They were ready. Actually, when Jefferson was writing it down, he was like, as the powers to impeach shall be given to the majority of the House of Representatives or to some random woman named Robin Kelly. Thus signed, Thomas, I hate the Barbary State, Jefferson. Yeah. You didn't know that in history? Oh, yeah, it's true.
Secretary Noem has violated the Constitution, and she needs to be held accountable for terrorizing our communities. Operation Midway Blitz has torn apart the Chicagoland area.
Why? Why is it torn apart, the Chicagoland area? Why Chicagoland? What's wrong in Chirac? What's going on? Are you telling me the South Side might not be peaceful?
President Trump declared war on Chicago.
He did not?
And then he brought violence and destruction to our city and our suburbs in the
No. You look at me. I don't care whether you're Republican. I don't care whether you're Democrat. I don't care whether you're Libertarian. I don't care whether you're French. You and I both know that one of the most dangerous cities in this country has been and continues to be Chicago, Illinois. The mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, somehow more disliked than his predecessor, Beetlejuice, got in front of the cameras and made the case that crime was a part of Chicago's history, like basketball is of Indiana or obesity is of Wisconsin. I'm sorry, I just a little joke at the Badgers there. So in all seriousness, we realize this is ridiculous, right? She's not fooling anyone here, the representative from Chicago, who was probably elected by a man in a trench coat with 437 ballots that all say the exact same name on them. Forget about it. Like, we're in agreement on this, correct?
Form of immigration enforcement. In my district, federal agents rappelled down from Black Hawk helicopters and
which is freaking awesome.
Burst into an apartment building in the South Shore area.
That's awesome. That's incredible. Up until a couple of years ago, the only way we were able to see anything remotely close to that was playing Ubisoft's game Watch Dogs. I'm leveling with you. You guys have no idea how hard I work to connect with the entire age range of our audience. To go from connecting to, our dearest boomers down to the Gen Xers, the millennials, and I haven't really worked on Gen Z yet, so we're going to ignore that for a minute. We realize how ridiculous this is. There's nothing here that's going on. They haven't cited any laws that are being broken. But that has not stopped the most impressive thing of all. I must inform you, the liberal white women are out. They are mad. They maybe have Googled a clip from Braveheart, and they are ready to cause some trouble. Now, this really, really hurts me, and it just kind of at a physical level. You may have to go take a shower after watching these, but it's a risk I'm willing to take here. So up first, there are women who are now shaving their heads like they did for Britney Spears or when internet trolls convinced people Justin Bieber had cancer. Said, we have watched Renee Cook, not her name, but so much for say her name. Maybe that's why it's important. They've already forgotten her name. Renee Cook get brutally gunned down by ICE. ICE has shot at least 3 other people before this, and countless others have suffered and disappeared because of them. I'm sick of feeling helpless and like there's nothing I can do, so here's my peaceful protest. So she shaves her head. Yes, I'm here for it. All right. This is better than the sex strike. When all of the Buffalo got out and announced they weren't going to have sex with men, and all of the men were like, oh, thank God. No, this is one of many. Here's another.
Here we are at my official dating profile request. I am 42. I'm almost 42. I am a relationship anarchist. I am on the lookout for somebody who right now I'd be able to call and say, hey, get in the passenger seat and let's go fuck some shit up. Because
hey, you want to get shot like Renee Good? Yeah, those are some hot dating lines. I also enjoy watching someone struggle to put on Carhartt overalls because they don't do any work that requires Carhartt overalls.
Right now in Minneapolis, what is happening we are being occupied by ICE agents who are, of course I couldn't get this on what is happening here,
That woman is struggling with the strap of her overalls like Mazie Hirono trying to find the correct notes in a congressional hearing.
Are going door to door, it's because I'm doing it backwards, going door to door and
doing great,
kidnapping
sweetie.
people from their homes. Not just from their homes, they are going to schools. They are going to churches.
Look how long it took her to get, they're going to schools. Awkward silence. 3 hours later. Okay. Awesome. So her dating profile is, hey, you want to go violate some federal laws? Really good stuff. Here's my personal favorite, is that we all have an opinion on these particular individuals, right? There are words, appropriate and inappropriate, that run through your mind when dealing with these people. So they have announced they are going to become even more so. If you weren't convinced yet, yes, there is a viewer and listener discretion to this episode this evening.
If they're going to murder us while calling us fucking bitches, then I think we need to be bigger fucking bitches.
Okay, a couple of things here. First of all, the rainbow keffiyeh that will get you thrown from a roof in Gaza, excellent. The way that, and this is just, for the ladies out there, the way that your makeup does not match the adjacent layers of your makeup. Now, I know very precious little about makeup. All I know about makeup is keeping my face from being as shiny as the Irish tend to be on cameras. Adding the Cherokee blood really doesn't help, so I'm kind of a beacon unless I put a little powder on the face. But I'm pretty sure that you're not supposed to make it look like you got pissed on by a drunk raccoon. Just cool tips. Also, you're not supposed to rack the slide of your clearly plastic handgun like you are trying to start a cheap weed eater from 1983. No. Look at that. She racks this slide like she's trying to rip a ring pop out of King Arthur's stone.
Then I think we need to be bigger fucking bitches.
Incredible. I tell you what, I wasn't sure that Indiana Jones was going to retrieve his whip from that crack in the ground. Excellent stuff. So the left is doing really well. Now, this is the big kicker. The Department of Homeland Security has now announced they're not going to investigate the officer who, from 37 different camera angles, clearly acted in self-defense. They're not going to Derek Chauvin this man, nor should they. And so now, 6 U.S. federal prosecutors from Minneapolis are resigning in protest. Now, that should be a problem. And the reason that should be a problem is this means there are those who were appointed to positions like, for example, Joe Thompson, one of the prosecutors, who is super duper duper angry, oh, by the way, appointed by Biden's Department of Justice, that they are not going to lynch this officer for doing his job. Every piece of footage that has come out and continues to come out shows very, very clearly that Renee Good was in the wrong. She was there to obstruct justice. She was there to threaten lives. And the ICE agent was doing what he was supposed to. And also, former National Guardsman, 10 years of training, served in combat in the sandbox. From all intents and purposes, a very good man. So Joe Thompson, one of these prosecutors, resigning. Why? He didn't resign when special counsel Robert Hur's team declined to bring charges against Joe Biden. Even when Robert Hur said, hey, it's very clear Joe's guilty here, but he's so dementia-ridden, I don't think that we could stay awake through his court testimony. He might start speaking in tongues. I just don't know if we have enough Pentecostals in this federal district that can be on the jury pool to translate. We're going to get emails. In all seriousness, to all of y'all, the performative outrage of saying, well, fine, I'm gonna quit. It's lame. It's sad. It's pathetic. It's lame and gay when a prosecutor from Minneapolis quits over not getting to prosecute whom he wants. And it's lame and gay when Marjorie Taylor Greene quits Congress because she's mad Donald Trump doesn't hate Israel. So, excellent. This would be a great time to plug, by the way. My colleague Virginia Allen at the Daily Signal did a phenomenal interview with Ambassador Mike Huckabee today on the escalating situation over in the Middle East. We were not able to get that up to y'all before we got to the show this evening. But that is going to be on the Daily Signal, if not tonight, tomorrow. Highly recommend it. Keep an eye out for that one. Now we're going to cut away because, again, just something fun to point out here. The new line from the left, from guys like, for example, Jacob Frey, are really going to screw the Democrats over. And that means we're going to bring on Wesley Hunt, one of the best guys in Congress, down from in Texas, to talk about it. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome. Jacob Frey, mayor of Minneapolis, the guy who was able to beat the Somalian guy, whose entire platform was, I like fraud. It's neat. That guy, Jacob Frey, somehow was able to convince the other half of the Somali migrant voters in Minneapolis in the middle of an actual honest-to-God Klan war, suggesting, hey, I actually like fraud a little bit more. Now he's so angry about ICE. He has announced that ICE really needs to go to all of these red states. They need to go to Florida. They need to go to Texas because, there's got to be a bunch of illegals there.
There are countless more people that are undocumented in Florida and Texas and Utah. Why are they in these much smaller cities in the middle of the Midwest?
Joining us now from the 38th in Texas, where Jacob Frey of Minneapolis seems to indicate there's no ICE, there's no immigration enforcement, nothing at all. It's apparently lawless, just like Big Iron on his hip or something. Representative Wesley Hunt. Sir, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it, brother.
So just right off the top of the bat, I got to tee it up for you. I'm told that ICE only goes to blue states. They never have anything to do with Texas or Florida or Utah. What do you have to say? You're a representative from that side of the country.
I was actually on Will Cain's show live when that news conference broke, and I watched it and listened to it and literally laughed from my soul. You see, the difference between red states and blue states is that ICE is actually in every state. They obviously operate here in Texas. The difference is that our law enforcement coordinates with ICE because they know that they have a job from the federal government to do, and rather than obstruct their jobs, we're simply helping them because that's exactly what the will of the people is by the will of the people is by putting President Trump back in office, by having him win the popular vote, by having him win the Electoral College, every single swing state, 85% of counties swung his way, all that good stuff, keeping the House and the Senate. And he ran on what? Cleaning up the immigration mess that was set up by the Biden-Harris administration. So this should be no shocker to anyone that the president is simply executing on what he told the world that he was going to do. And now liberals are losing their minds because this is an 80-20 issue. People absolutely want a sovereign border. They do want our rules cleaned up. And as a sovereign nation, we should know every single person who comes in and out of this country. And now you have liberal states and liberal cities that are simply working against the will of the people and against the will of the federal government. And they are again showing exactly who they are. They are obstructionists. They hate this country. And no matter what they do, we are still going to stay the course and ensure that we execute the will of the people.
So you talk about staying the course. There are a couple of squad members, as they're called in Congress, whether, of course, we're talking about Representative Ilhan Omar in Minnesota, AOC in New York, or, of course, in your neck of the woods, Jasmine Crockett, who have made the case that actually this ICE maneuver is all the way to, how did she juxtapose it? Have y'all picking cotton, I think is the way that Miss Crockett described it. So I'm just going to say, you and Crockett, both in Texas, both running for higher office here. What in the world do you say when someone takes a super old Obama era talking point that makes about as much sense as, a 10th season of Scrubs and throws it in front of the American people and says that's clearly why ICE is doing this, to reinstitute slavery or something?
this is something that I always say, and this is, I hope that Jasmine and I can end up on a debate stage together. Nothing would make me happier. I've actually offered her an opportunity to debate. Of course, she turned it down, but we just don't see the world the same way. When people make slavery and racial tropes like that, it really kind of makes me laugh, because those days are behind us. Those days are over. And yes, there was a time when slavery existed in this country, but now you have me and Jasmine Crockett. Both of us are around the same age. We have both been Black for over 40 years. Both of us represent districts in this great nation. We get to be one of 435 people. I represent a white majority district that President Trump would have won by 20 points. I won by 25 points, which means that like a lot of white people had to vote for this Black man because they're judging me not by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. And no, nobody has asked me to pick cotton at any point in my entire life. These are the kinds of Marxist views that they are taking because they're trying to continue to divide us by thinking that slavery is imminent when it's been dead for a very long time. My great-great-grandfather was born on a plantation. 3 of his great-great-grandchildren, me, my brother, and my sister, all went to West Point. We all served this country. At one point, all 3 of us were deployed in Iraq at the same time for 2 months, with their 60 years worth of military service just in my family. And no, when I was in the military, they weren't asking me to pick cotton. Actually, they asked me to operate an AX-64 Delta Apache helicopter. I can assure you that's not picking cotton. So whenever I start hearing these tropes, I'm simply reminded of the difference in how we view the world. I want to continue to move forward. This country is the greatest country that's ever existed. The fact that we get to serve this country in the halls of Congress is an honor, and I need to remind not just her, but the entire Democrat Party of that. And I have been off the plantation for a very long time. Last I checked, there are no slaves and there are no slave owners. And by us cleaning up our roles and ensuring that we take care of our population is all we are trying to do. It's the right move. It's not about going against Black or brown people. This is simply about doing the right thing.
So you used the word Marxist when you were talking about kind of the motivations for a lot of these individuals on the left side of the aisle in Congress, or whether we're at state or local levels of government. And as an Apache pilot, you certainly know what burning, flaming messes look like up in the air. Now, you're at a bit of a distance from New York City. You're at a bit of a distance from Minneapolis or Seattle. You have individuals who are very open about incorporating Marxist ideology, the removing the frigid individualism with the warmth of collectivism, and now instituting the same Minnesota-style childcare policies in New York. What is the Republican counter to that kind of policy? How do you make things easier for families in general without going down the Moscow central heating machine?
Fewer regulations, believing life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice, having a low cost of living, being a business-friendly state, being a proponent of the First and Second Amendment rights, like we have down here in Texas. And look, this is a constitutional republic. So these states can go either way. They can choose. They have their own rights. They could choose to go down the Marxist road if they want to. But when I am running for United States Senate here in Texas, I simply use these other states as an example of what not to do. And if we're not careful, we could absolutely go down this road. I actually point out all of these cities. I actually point out what happened with Mamdani in New York City and what's happening in Minneapolis in the leadership of an Ilhan Omar, in the leadership of a Tim Walz that oversaw one of the biggest fraud cases in the history of this country. And I tell people right here in Texas, oh, if we're not careful, that too can be us. And that's quite the tactic to use, because the people here in Texas want no part of that. We have to distance ourselves as far as possible. And this is the reason why the fastest growing state in the entire union is Texas, followed closely by Florida. Now, isn't it crazy that the states that are losing the most people, number 1, California, and number 2, New York. And where are they going to? Texas and Florida, and they get redder and redder by the day. These are the kinds of policies, and these are the kinds of of values that support this constitutional republic are in states like these. And I simply say, if you want more of that, of what we have in Texas, vote for Wesley Hunt. If you want more of what you have in New York and in Minnesota, vote for anybody, vote for an AOC, vote for an Ilhan Omar, vote for a Jasmine Crockett. And I can assure you, I will be the opposite.
So you say tactics, and I'm not just trying to, micro pick on words here, but it is interesting to me from an outside observer from up here in Indiana that there are some announcements that are made. For example, when Jasmine Crockett announced her candidacy, she said she was going to run an out-of-the-box style campaign, something like a Colin Allred, something like a Beto O'Rourke. And she praised those unusual campaigns because that's what Texans wanted. What do you think of someone suggesting they're going to run a Beto O'Rourke or Colin Allred out-of-the-box style campaign in Texas?
How'd that work out for Beto and how'd that work out for Colin Allred?
Well, I wanted to hear you say that.
I mean, it's just look. They both lost, and again, Jasmine Crockett was created in a lab to lose a general election in the great state of Texas. And she could try to go outside the box and try the liberal I am a victim race bait route if she wants to. But this is a state that President Trump just won by over 15 points. Ted Cruz just won by double digits as well against his Democrat counterpoint. And that's not going to work. And just yesterday, she basically called Texans racist, which again, really cracks me up because, again, I mean, here I am sitting here, the congressman running for Senate and doing quite well in my home state as a black man. And what I love about that is that nobody cares. And in fact, by this time next year, the two senators from the great state of Texas will be black and Cuban American. Isn't that something? That's how racist this state is, that Ted Cruz and Wesley Hunt, Ted Cruz will be the senior senator, Wesley Hunt will be the junior senator, and I tell you what, nobody here is even going to be talking about our race. They're going to be talking about our conservative bona fides and how we're going to defend this great nation and how we're going to defend our state. Again, come and take it is our motto. Don't mess with Texas. That's exactly the kind of leadership that me and Ted Cruz are going to represent.
I have never had a candidate in an interview on this show who has baited me so hard into violating FCC rules regarding interviewing candidates. I don't know whether I should applaud you or tell you should be ashamed of yourself.
You're welcome.
Representative Wesley Hunt, and I've been told, phenomenal Apache pilot, West Point graduate, also, again, of course, the 38th congressional in Texas. Sir, thank you very much for stopping by.
God bless you. Thank you for having me, and I hope the new year is treating you very well.
Now, just because I will get questions about this, let me explain the FCC rules because other show hosts never seem to do so. So there are two kind of rules that are important. First of all, this show is, I work for the Daily Signal. There's the Daily Signal Institute and Media Group. We follow a certain set of rules to try to remain fair on the election side, and the same over on FCC. We broadcast this show on Spectrum. Spectrum means radio and TV. I don't mean cable, but radio signal, TV signal. So here's what that means. It means that I don't endorse candidates for election. I never say, hey, you should vote for this person. I don't tend to do so. Number two, I make sure, and we already have, especially thanks to the stellar work from producer Lou, we reach out to the other candidates in the primary as well as the general election, and we say, hey, Jasmine Crockett, hey, I believe the primary for the Republican Senator, John Cornyn, you're welcome on the show. Would love to have you, would be thrilled. Would enjoy it very, very much. So that said, let's get into some other big news. If you like the show, by the way, if you've stuck around with us so far, before we get into some bonus tonus, some Bill Clinton and James Comer and Ketanji Brown-Jackson, well, consider giving us a like on the YouTube video or the Rumble video. Subscribe. That helps us out. That honestly gives us a good old kick right in the algorithm. That's good stuff. And we are really thrilled that you're here. Seriously, it means a lot that you would tune in. A huge thanks while we have that attention over here to Ruby Hoove9, who gifted a Daily Signal membership to somebody. That gives you earlier access to interviews by about a day. And then also emojis during the live stream. Again, not something that we try to heavily advertise. It's just a way that some people have said thanks. So who's not saying thanks? James Comer. Do you like that segue? Representative James Comer, House Oversight Committee. They said, hey, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, put the intern down and you come to this oversight hearing meeting about the Epstein files. You want a chance in committee to go off against Trump? Here you go, Bill. Here's the chance to do it. And what did Bill say? I actually have some saxophone and some French fries to attend to. And didn't show up. So James Comer could sign an angry letter, or you could do what was done to several previous Trump administration officials. You could hold the individual in contempt of Congress. Here's Representative James Comer.
I think everyone knows by now Bill Clinton did not show up. And I think it's important to note that this subpoena was...
Lauren Boebert. I'm sorry. As those who do tune into the show semi-regularly know, I am obsessed with the FedEx Kinko's print shop that they have. If I ever ran for office at a federal level, horrible decision, and decided, hey, I'm going to be, representative of the Indiana 6th Congressional, and I made it. And I just want to let you know, I would spend all of my time in the congressional print shop where they just print random posters and pictures all day, making some of the most ridiculous charts known to man. For those who are listening and not watching, Lauren Boebert is behind him with the painting, a print of the painting of Bill Clinton in a dress and heels that was found, I believe, in Epstein's either apartment in New York or apartment in Florida. I think it's New York. Don't hold me to that one, though. But just Bill Clinton in a dress while he's giving this very serious press conference. It's just an incredible time to be in this country.
And I think it's important to note that this subpoena was voted on in a bipartisan manner by this committee. This wasn't something that I just issued as chairman of the committee. This was voted on by the entire committee in a unanimous vote of the House Oversight Committee to subpoena former President Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Now, Hillary Clinton's supposed to show up tomorrow. We'll see what happens there. But
breaking: Hillary Clinton is going to be chilling in Cedar Rapids. She's not going to show up for this.
Respect to the former president, he did not show up today. One reason I think most Americans want President Clinton to answer some questions is because he visited the White House. Jeffrey Epstein visited the White House 17 times while Bill Clinton was president. I've been in Congress 9 years. I think I've been to the White House 9 times in 9 years. Epstein was in the White House double the amount of time that I was under one president.
All right, so then he announces that they're considering holding him in contempt of Congress. Do it. Do it. Come on, go ahead. You have people don't know that there is a tiny jail cell in the basement of the U.S. Capitol. That is for contempt of Congress. So the president of the United States has all this executive power. Congress has one small executive authority that does not involve impeachment and removal of an acting official. Congress can hold anyone who does not show up for a subpoena. Congress can hold anyone who doesn't show up to testify as they are ordered, a citizen of the United States or a legal resident, or I believe someone who's been in the United States for 15 days, in the tiny jail cell in the basement of the Capitol. Do you know how incredible of a tourism exhibit that would be? Listen, President Trump, I know you're not listening, but if you're listening, if someone in the president's orbit, President, listen, you have a wonderful walk of presidents outside the Rose Garden where all of these presidents' pictures are. You could get the greatest photo of all time of Bill Clinton looking sad in this tiny jail cell in the basement of the U.S. Capitol. And imagine the tourism money you could make. Walk up to the Bill Clinton. Incredible. You can make it like a little exhibit, like at the zoo. Have kids poke him with sticks. It'd be incredible. I'm saying, you could have like a keychain cigars. I'm just saying, it would be kind of neat. You could rename it the Monica Lewinsky jail cell. Think of the tourism, huh? All right, now on to, I got a good comment. People are not quite a fan of my particular aims and desires for Bill Clinton. By which I mean, if you have some like secret desire that Bill Clinton not be treated at this point kind of like a zoo animal and held in the contempt of Congress cage, I think you need to reevaluate your priorities. So that aside, I do want to bring up one thing. One of the comment people brought up that I haven't mentioned throughout all of these Iranian situations. It's 8:05 p.m. Eastern time here. there is something called the pizza tracker regarding the Pentagon a long time ago. And by that, I mean back in the aughts. There was a time in which you could tell whether the Pentagon was considering some major international strategy based on how busy one particular Domino's was near the Pentagon. Now, since that has happened, there are a couple of different pizza places near the Pentagon that are now like tracked. They buy different pizzas from different places. I should point out, just for, kicks and giggles, the Extreme Pizza and the Papa John's near the Pentagon are at a 179% spike and a 294% spike. So for those of you out there who believe in weird ways of keeping track of major international movement, there you go. That's just a little fun open source intelligence piece. We're going to slip very quickly away to commercial, which, as those who watch the live stream know, is literally just going to be right back out, right back in. And then we're going to talk about the Supreme Court shenanigans. Get out your crayons, kids. You're going to have a movie snack ready. It's Ketanji Brown-Jackson time here on the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, where we, the humble people of the United States of America, whether you're in the great Hoosier state, whether you're in another state, ranging from great states like Texas to the worst place on earth, the state of Connecticut, you understand what a woman is. I don't really, as a former science teacher, need to reach down to my shelf of textbooks and get out the biology textbook. We know what a woman is and isn't. Unfortunately, the most liberal member of the Supreme Court, yes, even more liberal than Justice Sonia Sotomayor, is Ketanji Brown-Jackson, who famously said during her nomination hearing that she could not define a woman. Well, now there is a major court case happening in the Supreme Court of the United States. And in this particular case, there are arguments in cases from Idaho and West Virginia challenging laws that bar opposite sex students from competing in a particular sex's sport. So if you are a boy and you think you're a girl, you're not suddenly able to participate in girl sports, and then vice versa. So this caused quite a kerfluffle. Because, of course, the lawyers that they brought in to argue, boys should be allowed to play in women's sports and cause brutal injury. Again, we, of course, interviewed Peyton McNabb before, who suffered a very serious brain injury after playing against men in volleyball. Samuel Alito of the Supreme Court had an opportunity to have what might be one of the most novel arguments ever had in the Supreme Court. You might think, going into something like this, that all you got to do is define what makes a boy and a girl, and then presto. Then you can decide who gets to play in boys and girls sports. Easy enough, right? That makes sense to me, especially regarding Title IX and how that's set up in federal law. Well, the lead lawyer in favor of transgender individuals in the opposite sex's sport has no definition for boy or girl.
For a category of students classified as boys and a category of students classified as girls.
Yes, Your Honor.
If it does that, then is it not necessary for there to be, for equal protection purposes, if that is challenged under the Equal Protection Clause, an understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
So Samuel Alito, Justice of the Supreme Court, is talking to Kathleen R. Hartnett. She is the lead lawyer who is arguing that transgender people should be allowed to play in opposite sex sports. Alito says very clearly, so we have equal protection clauses so that, for example, someone can't discriminate against someone because of their sex. So therefore, just so that someone doesn't say, actually, I'm a girl, and so therefore you discriminated against me, because that would trigger equal protection lawsuits. Discrimination lawsuits, then we need to have a legal definition, right? There has to be an objective definition of the law. Otherwise, women are screwed. They have no rights for all time. Here's what the lawyer says.
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is that definition? For equal protection purposes, what does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think that the underlying enactment, whatever it was, the policy, the law, we'd have to have an understanding of how the state or the government was just understanding that term to figure out whether or not someone was excluded. We do.
So you can hear her obfuscating. She's stuttering. She has no idea. Define. So we would need a legal definition, right? She says, well, actually, you need to look at the government and the law and this camel and the letter G on Sesame Street to know what in this case we're talking about. It's really embarrassing. This is a case being heard before the Supreme Court, which means these arguments have happened before. This is essentially like watching Ernie from Sesame Street go, hey, Bert, I just picked up poker yesterday, Bert, and now I'm playing championship poker at the Texas Hold'em Championships. I'm holding 3 Uno cards, Bert. That's essentially what this is like. She's argued this before. She has no argument here. Have you ever been a lawyer before? You're supposed to have arguments. She's got nothing.
Not have a definition for the court. And we don't take issue with we're not disputing the definition here. What we're saying is that the way it applies in practice is to exclude birth sex males categorically from women's teams, and that there's a subset of those birth sex males where it doesn't make sense to do so according to the state's own interest.
So she makes the case, I can't give you an argument or a definition of what a boy or a girl is, because even if there are boys, some of those boys are actually girls. I've argued with my toddler today. I don't know if any of you have. My toddler's arguments, I am very proud to say, are beyond more competent than whatever drivel came out of this individual, again, who looks like the latest in Rachel Maddow knockoffs.
How can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means for equal protection purposes?
I think here we just know that we basically know that that they've identified pursuant to their own statute, Lindsay qualifies as a birth sex male, and she's being excluded categorically from the women's teams as the statute. So we're taking the statute's definitions as we find them, and we don't dispute them. We're just trying to figure out, do they create an equal protection problem?
I will give $50 to the first one of you who can tell me what she is trying to say using grammatically correct sentences that do not give me a stroke. I don't even think if you asked her to repeat that same argument immediately after she concluded, she could give that to you twice in a row. To be clear, my job is improvisational analysis and communication. Again, as I've shown you guys before, here on my particular show notes, you will see for this section of the show, there's 3 bullet points. That's what I'm working off of. First one is Samuel Alito. Second one is a Ketanji Brown-Jackson clip. The third one is another definition clip. And then there's one of the funniest exchanges in all time. Those are my notes. I could probably repeat to you any argument of analysis that I make because that's my job and I believe in these arguments. I understand these. I've studied these throughout the day so that I can come and argue them to you who don't have time to steep in, as I call it, the bathwater of politics all day. She argues transgender cases for a living, at least I assume it's a she, and she has no idea how to state how you're going to delineate the legal definition of sex from someone making stuff up on the fly, like a murderer saying, oh, I was insane. I thought it was a toaster I was shooting. Please put me in an insane asylum and not, maximum security prison. Now, Ketanji Brown-Jackson, not to be outdone, she cannot stand not being the stupidest person in the room at all times. She got out, not just the Crayola, she got out the Rose Art crowns and started munching. She went to town. And, apparently appears to create a brand new gender. So there's people who are straight, people who are gay, people who are transgender, people who are what are called cisgender, CIS, meaning normal. And then I guess redheads are a brand new gender. Here you go, Ketanji Brown-Jackson.
You have the overarching classification, everybody has to be play on the team that is the same as their sex at birth. But then you have a gender identity definition that is operating within that, meaning a distinction, meaning that for cisgender girls.
Cisgingers, ladies and gentlemen. Cisginger girls. Ah, yes. Man, she was on the, cisginger archery and angry drinking team. It was incredible. I don't know if, she was junior varsity. Those are all the Scots. Varsity is the Irish. I have no idea how they're doing this year. But in haggis frying, no one's beaten them yet. And the Shamrock collecting team, wow. And don't get me started on the cisgender bagpipe quartet. They're probably going to make it to the finals this year.
They can play consistent with their gender identity. For transgender girls, they can't.
So I think that, okay, so as to the part of...
Poor Michael Williams. He's the Solicitor General of West Virginia, and trying to talk to Ketanji Brown-Jackson is quite like trying to convince someone that that thinks women's suffrage means women in pain. Well, I don't want women to suffer. You have to okay, hang on, stop. Just you're already hurting my heart and my soul.
About your ability to pass over from boy to girl.
Yes.
You can go from one way but not the other. I want to be clear that BPJ is not challenging that specific classification. I think that's important to start with. But I think, if anything, that's useful evidence as to the lack of a transgender-based discrimination, because if the legislature were just sort of unsettled by the notion of transgender athletes, I think the answer would have been to then bar them from passing over in any way consistent with their gender.
I appreciate that. I guess
that's how every single response goes with Ketanji Brown-Jackson. By the way, if I would have continued, she would say, I'm just trying to understand. Because she never has any idea what's going on. In every single oral argument that we end up hearing the recording of or the audio of live on television, you always hear Ketanji Brown-Jackson going, I'm just trying to understand. Or, hear me out, you read the law and you understand the law because you are a lawyer with law degrees that are supposed to give you that education. See, I can tell you what curriculum and pedagogy are and how they are best operated and created to be in chorus, because I had certain education academic training. Now, it was a waste of money, but it had a couple of perks here and there. Theoretically, one to avoid being called an equity hire would have the skills that show they're incredibly competent. Exhibit A, Wesley Hunt. As he pointed out in our interview, he said, I live in a majority white district. No one ever talks about it. He said, because I'm good at my job. No one brings up my color. They bring up my character. Crazy concept stuff. And again, the definition stuff played out in these particular oral arguments today that's just hilarious.
This notion that this is really just about the definition of we accept that you can separate boys and girls, and we are now looking at the definition of a girl, and we're saying only people who were girl assigned at birth qualify.
And
yep. Yeah, I don't think that little girls need to be exposed to dudes naked in the locker room. It's not crazy. You can't even articulate it. You can't even argue it yourself. That was not the best part of the day, though. We don't have the audio for this. But I think that we have the referral, the actual counter from the lawyer to Ketanji Brown-Jackson in a picture file here. Yes, there we go. So Jackson says, I guess I'm still struggling to understand why the state would have to have perfectly tailored laws. I would think the state would just have to make exceptions where people can demonstrate that the justification that makes the state's conduct constitutional doesn't apply to them. So she is making the case, I don't think that you should have to tailor a law. There should just be exceptions when the rough outline of the law might have left something out. And the lawyer responds, so making exceptions is tailoring your law. That's literally what it means, to tailor your law. I don't know how at this point you can go without impeaching this woman. Honest to God. I mean, really. You don't know? Have you ever bought something off the rack and it didn't quite fit, but it kind of fits? I know that a lot of these people have everything custom tailored from birth. Some of us buy from off the rack, and if it's a really nice suit that I like, there is a chance, although a small chance, that I might get it taken in. I might get it tailored because my build is a slight exception to the average person that they build for on the rack. It's not difficult. You do this all the time. When you get into a car for the first time, you tailor your experience to the car. You adjust the seat. They make the car in a way so you can adjust the height of the steering wheel, the seat, the height of the seat belt, so that you can live within the framework of what they have created so that it fits you. Again, this is yet another instance where common sense for the average American goes completely against the grain of these high-minded academics who like to pretend they're so much smarter than you, but don't understand what exceptions are in laws. Guys, I have written or advised on state policy for 22 different states. 22 different states regarding education policy. It's all exceptions. That's what it is. You have to tailor education policy from state to state, because the Nebraska Constitution is a heck of a lot different than the Indiana Constitution, which is infinitely different from the Commonwealth of Kentucky's Constitution. They're very, very different. You have to tailor things, not to mention legal precedent. It's a big bowl of spaghetti. You can't just go through with kitchen shears and carve through the spaghetti and tie and cut all of the knots that have been made and things that are tied together. You can't do that. Supreme Court Justice of the United States. It is truly depressing. I mean, it's funny. I mean, we all like to make fun of her. Ketanji Brown-Jackson, of course, I have the crayon jokes. They have to give her the safety scissors. You know, when we go into any kind of Supreme Court oral argument hearing, her microphone could be made by little tykes for all I know. But I will say this. When there is a group of people that tell you that to be moral, you have to follow her arguments because although they are so impetuously stupid that her IQ turned into wattage could not toast a piece of bread at all, that you need to believe in that argument because that's moral kindness or something. No. You don't have to feel guilted into that. These are the same kinds of people who, like the author of an article today from People magazine, said that Scott Adams, and then described him as disgraced Dilbert comic founder, and then passed away today from his cancer. And of course, the lady looks exactly like the same facial, like chunk, the same oversized glasses straight out of the Golden Girls that look more like a street sign in Quebec than an actual piece of facewear. You know, I have the same pretentious, high-minded, well, everyone I don't like should die. I can't describe anything legally, but actually, incredible. What a time to be in these United States. I'll say this and then we'll log off. The stupidest people I ever came in contact with in academia, the dumbest people on planet Earth that I ever came in contact with, were at Indianapolis public schools who had master's degrees. My boss, my last year in Indianapolis public schools, had no idea why you had to test a hypothesis before it became like a scientific theory into practice. Had no idea. Didn't understand it. It's a third grade level piece of comprehension. Something about higher academia just scrubs it from you. And of course that, comes from moral hubris and pride and the arrogance that suggests that somehow you get degrees, you're better than the average American. Just again, to point from the show today, Wesley Hunt got a lot of degrees. Did you hear him gloat about how those make him better than you? Nope. As the comments were saying in the live stream, hey, what do you know? Really normal guy, talks down to earth. I like this guy. Wish he was in my state. Those kind of comments were coming in. Yeah, because he speaks to you like a normal person. And look, I know that my ADHD rattled brain and toxic sarcasm might grate on a few of you. Don't even get me started on his impressions. But aside from that, I try to just communicate with you using the same analogies that I did when I was in the classroom. Because that's just what you do. When you're a normal person and you're not wrapped in this weird academic bubble wrap, thinking you're better than everyone else, you're a lot happier. And it turns out people connect with that a lot more than the Rachel Maddow lookalike lawyer suggesting that she doesn't have a definition for anything, but you really need to rule in her favor because come on. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. Really good to have you guys here. As always, seriously, cannot thank you guys enough for tuning into the Tony Kinnett cast. Really, really do appreciate you guys. Hope you have a wonderful evening. Get a good night's rest. We will see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, unless the Iranian stuff happens earlier, in which case we'll try to go live as soon as we're able. I'm Tony Kinnett. This is the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first out of 93 WIBC. Take care.